right, everybody.
We're back.
We are here and we are ready for week 19 of Now Showing with Mike and Wayne. This week we are going to talk about rock and roll movies, biopics, just regular rock music movies, anything that fits into that category of film. I am going to start this week. I want to talk about it's a movie that just came out recently within the last year. And it's become quickly one of my favorite rock and roll movies, and that is the movie Rocket Man, starring Taron Egerton, directed by Dexter Fletcher, about the great Elton John. And this movie, we'll just a little backstory. Obviously, it's about Elton John. It's about his drug addiction problems. It's about his romance life. It's about his music, and they do all of it through basically musical interludes. And when this was explained to me when it was this kind of movie, I'm not a very big musical person when it comes to just dancing in the street, singing and stuff like that, like Grease or stuff like that. But this movie, when it hit me, like right away, the first song, it hits you. And in my opinion, and I believe in my wife's opinion as well, she's not here to talk about it, but we were both like hooked into it. And like we're not even the biggest Elton John fans. And it just it pulls you in. And it's just so good. And Taron Egerton is so good at singing and being Elton John, I think, in my personal opinion.
That opening scene is just fantastic. That opening musical number.
It's so good. He's like at a 12-step program meeting. And and he just breaks out into that song. It's so great. The performances from everybody involved are fantastic. Let me just go through the cast here real quick. It just everybody hits in it. Taron Egerton plays Elton John. Jamie Bell plays Bernie Taupin, who's the guy that wrote all the music with Elton. Richard Madden plays John Reed, which is one of Elton's first big love interests. Gemma Jones is Ivy, Elton's grandmother. Bryce Dallas Howard plays his mother. Stephen Graham is Dick James. He's one of the music guys in the business, and Stephen Graham's always awesome. So. Tate Donovan plays Doug Weston, and just the whole cast is fantastic. The songs are brilliant. That's why you're coming to this type of movie. And like I said, when I knew they were making it, I assumed it would be more like a Bohemian Rhapsody or Walk the Line or Ray, and that kind of, you have an actor playing the role. He sings maybe most or some of the songs, and then they have lots of drugs, lots of sex, and that's it. But this was a completely different movie. I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that he was still alive, and Elton John had seen some of the biopics that had come out and was like, you know what? If they're going to do a biopic on me, it's got to be the way I see it and the way that I saw my life. And I think that comes across so great in this movie.
That's one of the things I wanted to jump on. When you talk about Walk the Line, for instance, Johnny Cash, it really focuses on his early career and the middle. It doesn't really ever focus on his marriage with June Carter Cash and just what happened after that with their son being born and whatnot. It did focus a lot on his struggles with substance and whatnot.
Yeah.
Same thing with Ray. A fantastic performance. Jamie Foxx was absolutely brilliant in that. But again, in my personal opinion, focused way too much on Ray Charles' drug addiction and whatnot. I don't think it celebrated him enough. But that's just me.
Yes. Well, and this movie, I think with this movie, it does everything that, those movies did, but then it basically, it does that through the music. So you're not only able to understand his drug problems, his relationship problems, his industry issues that he had with the whole industry overall, but you get to hear it through the lyrics that he wrote with his writing partner and the songs that they made together. They use that to kind of glue it all together. So while it's kind of a similar story, I see what you're saying. They tell it in a completely different way where the music is the star of it. It's just using that to tell this similar story, which is, I always kind of remark as funny, and we'll get to that in my next pick, that these biopics actually follow their own little formula, which is funny that you could take real life people and throw them into a musical formula, and just how maybe different they are, but all similar their life paths were all at the same time. I think that's a very interesting aspect of the music biopic. And this movie, to me, like I said, it followed a lot of those same beats, but then it did something completely different, and it shocked me in a really good way. And I meant to watch it this week. I just haven't had the time to watch it again. But I really recommend it. It's available on Amazon Prime and Hulu if you have either one of those. It's fantastic. Check it out. Wayne, let's go to your next pick.
Well, I wanted to. You said you're not a huge Elton John fan. Do you have a favorite song or track of his that you particularly care for?
I would say that my favorite stuff from him comes from The Lion King. So something like Circle of Life. That's what I grew up on, and like I'll be honest, I played that soundtrack nonstop probably for like 6 months. So in high school, we had to do this thing where you would lip sync and you got to choose an artist, and I chose Elton John, and I think I did Circle of Life. And we had like a big crown and a cape in our acting area, so I just dressed up so that's how much of an influence the Lion King soundtrack had on my early life, I would say, which is where I became a huge fan of his. And that's why I'm a big fan of his, but I'm not like a diehard because I haven't gone back and like listened to all his original songs. I don't know, his whole catalog. Obviously, I know the Tiny Dancer and some of his other major songs. I'm drawing a blank right now. That often happens when we're talking, but
I'm a big fan of Crocodile Rock and the song Daniel.
Okay. See, and I probably know those songs, but you say their names to me, and I can't pinpoint which ones they are right off the top of my head. But that being said, I still love this movie. It's a good way to kind of sell this movie, is whether you're an Elton John fan or not, you can like this movie and enjoy it for what it is. And that's what I did.
Absolutely. That's a great point, because you don't have to be a diehard who has every LP on vinyl to enjoy this movie. Mm-hmm. Which, it's going to lead me into my first one here in a little transition. I'm going back into the entrance to rock and roll, into the mid to late 1950s. My first choice is going to be the 1978 biopic, The Buddy Holly Story, starring Gary Busey as Buddy Holly, Charles Hardin Holly. Now, for those of you that are not familiar with Buddy Holly, or rock and roll era music in like the early 50s and whatnot, my father was a big fan of this era, so I grew up with this stuff, and it is just high energy, just head bopping, foot tapping stuff that you can just really put you in a good mood. Buddy Holly has numerous number one hits, and he is actually credited by some of the biggest artists ever. Here is a quote that I found in one of his tribute pages. Buddy Holly was a major influence in later popular musical artists, including Elvis Presley, Bob Dylan, the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, Eric Clapton, the Hollies, who named themselves after Buddy Holly in his honor, Elvis Costello, and Elton John. Now, one of the main reasons this happened is because in 1959, Buddy Holly, Ritchie Valens, and J.P. Richardson, known as the Big Bopper, were all tragically killed in a plane crash in Iowa. It is referred to as the day the music died. Now, if that sounds familiar to you, Don McLean's American Pie, that song is basically about the day the music died, the day that Buddy Holly, Ritchie Valens, and the Big Bopper were all taken from us tragically. So, as a fan of of this artist particularly, and spoiler alert, La Bamba, the Ritchie Valens movie is going to be my second thing that I'm going to talk about, but I really focus on Buddy Holly right now. So, Gary Busey, when you think Gary Busey, you think of his later work where he's crazed, or you think he's the bad guy in Lethal Weapon.
Yep.
But Gary Busey is an admitted fan of Buddy Holly's. So the amount of effort and time that he dedicated to this role, learning not only how to match the vocals of Buddy Holly, but also how to physically play the guitar and play all of the songs. The album for this movie is all played by Gary Busey and the supporting band. So I thought that was really interesting. Just a little tidbit that you all need to know about this. So Here's the little outline. The musical career of rock and roll pioneer Buddy Holly is chronicled from the days when Peggy Sue and Cindy Lou, a song about his first girlfriend, hit the charts, to his meteoric run to That'll Be the Day, up the charts, to his marriage and breakup with his original band, the Crickets, and the reunion with the band right before his untimely death. So it covers his whole life. He started out in Lubbock, Texas, very conservative, church-going crowd where rock and roll is known as the devil's music. He started out playing in roller rinks with, slow, methodical country songs. Every so often, the guy would let him break loose and play one of these rock tunes that he came up with. And that's just basically how it got started, to local DJs picking up on the tracks and doing crazy publicity stunts, like playing the same song over and over again for 24 hours straight, where the police had to come and break down doors to get them to stop playing this music. That's how rock and roll, kind of forced its way onto the scene and really kind of changed the minds of people, because a lot of the conservative adults of that era were firmly against rock and roll because it's the devil's music. It's an influence. It's going to make our kids do bad things. Kind of like in the 80s, how parents were against video games and whatnot. So this particular film, it does a terrific job showing I'll call it the struggle with fame, I guess, because he got so popular so fast, it almost seems like it overtook him. Not in the sense that he was overwhelmed or anything. It never really showed that he had any issues with drugs or alcohol or anything, but just dealing with the kind of fame that you get with this. It just, it showed a lot of turmoil between, the band, because they originally were called the Crickets. And then it's Buddy Holly and the Crickets. Eventually the bass player and the drummer, they have a huge falling out right before, I believe it's the Ed Sullivan Show, where I believe the bassist punches him and knocks out Buddy Holly's front teeth. So he's about to go on TV without, with his front teeth missing. So he uses chiclets to give the impression that, hey, everything's fine. And there's actually a little scene about that. What's wrong with his teeth? I don't know, just widen out so they can't show it. That's just one of the little things that I find are just amusing about this movie. The rock and roll is there. The ending is, spoiler alert, he dies at the end of the movie.
What?
And it is quite tragic, how it happens. I think that La Bamba, the movie I'm going to talk about next, handles it much better. Okay. With just really pulling on the heartstrings and whatnot. But yeah, 1978, Buddy Holly story, fantastic movie. A lot of people felt that it should have been nominated for an Academy Award, or maybe it was nominated and it should have won. A lot of people said that Gary Busey should have won Best Actor. I mean, he does a fantastic job. So if you have not seen this film and you don't know who Buddy Holly is, check this out. It's great.
I have been surprisingly quiet because I have not seen this movie, actually. And I will have to check it out because I know Gary Busey. Let's see. Yes, Oscar-nominated lead performance by Gary Busey. An Academy Award-winning musical score as well. So it did win an Oscar. But this movie's always intrigued me because, like you said, we've kind of known Busey, even pre-motorcycle accident, we knew him as a bad guy. So like Lethal Weapon and some of the other movies, Under Siege. And then post-motorcycle accident, he's been kind of crazy. So that's how I think the kids today know him, as crazy old Gary Busey. But before all that, before he was typecast as the villain in 80s and 90s movies, and before his motorcycle accident, he was an actor. And he was doing great work, from what I hear. I haven't seen most of it, so I can't really say personally. But I'm excited to check this one out. I will, on your recommendation, watch it. It sounds like it's pretty good. So,
don't go on expecting a Gary Busey movie, because you will not even really... It won't click that it's him until you actually, unless you're looking for it, obviously, which you are now. But it's okay. So, yeah.
All right. Well, moving right along, I'm going to jump into two movies, actually. They're more lighthearted. They are about the music industry, but they were what you would call either spoof movies or comedies. The first one is Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox Story. Now, this movie came out in 2008. I went and saw it in theaters right around Christmas time. It was directed by Jake Kasdan. It stars the great John C. Reilly, Oscar nominee, obviously not for this movie, but Oscar nominee, Kristen Wiig, Raymond J. Barry, Margot Martindale, Jenna Fisher, Tim Meadows, Chris Parnell, David Krumholtz is in it, Craig Robinson, Harold Ramis, Simon Helberg. It's basically, obviously, a send-up, if you've seen Walk the Line, a send-up of rock and roll biopics.
Yep.
It's a spoof movie. It did not do very well at the box office. Me and a few of my friends and other people that have seen it are, kind of like, why? Because critically, it was very well received. People really liked it. Anyone that saw it seemed to like it, but for some reason it didn't make any money. And so that's kind of why I want to talk about both these movies, because they are both, in my opinion, fantastic films that spoof the music industry and also show love to the music industry at the same time. They both created, one of the big things about these movies is Walk Hard. Not only is the movie hilarious, but the soundtrack is fantastic. And the soundtrack has its own Wikipedia page because it was a big hit. Just like the movie, just like we wanted the movie to be. The movie, well, like I said, it wasn't a big hit. It was kind of a cult hit, really, when it came out to it, which is funny because it's a big budget movie. So this movie starts, basically it's Walk the Line. That's the story you get. So his brother dies when he was younger. But what's funny about this movie is you could take it and line it up with Walk the Line. You could take it up and line it up with Ray. You could line up parts of it with Get On Up or Rocket Man. And it kind of all follows this similar pattern. And he gets famous. He meets their version of June Carter, which is not obviously June Carter. It's Edith Cox. I forget what her name is. There's a couple love interests in this movie. Edith and Darlene are the two love interests. Those are his two wives. Trying to describe this movie to somebody is difficult because you have to see it to believe it. But what works with this movie, what makes this movie work, is John C. Reilly. His commitment to the comedy, to the storytelling, and to the character, and to the music. Like, you can't have someone half-ass this type of movie. You have to go in hardcore. They have to believe everything they're doing, even though they know it's a spoof, they know it's a goof, but they have to believe, their character has to believe what's happening. And just from the amount of drugs that he tries all the time, like, oh, it's okay, Dewey, it's weed, it ain't gonna do shit to you. And, he ends up just going on this crazy path. It's hilarious. I can't really talk about some of the other moments because there are some full frontal moments, so people think can work their imagination on what that means. Just Raymond Barry playing the father who keeps telling him, wrong kid died. I mean, that's a long-running joke throughout the entire movie that's very funny. It was one of those movies that you when you see it, it just hits. And the comedy comes a mile a minute. It's hilarious from beginning to end. It's also heartwarming at the same time, which is, something that you kind of have to do in those movies. A good comedy not only makes you laugh, but makes you feel emotion as well. And whether it's a spoof movie or just a regular straight-up comedy like something like Anchorman or Airplane, it has to hit you kind of in all those different senses. And this movie does that. I want to talk. This is the type of movie I want to talk about on these podcasts because, again, it's one I feel like a lot of people avoided. And it's been on Netflix. It's been on Hulu, so you could check it out. The other one that fits into the same category.
Hang on 1 second. Before you even bring up the second one, I want to ask, do you think people kind of had a grudge or a preset disposition against this movie because they felt it was making fun of Walk the Line?
Yes.
Johnny Cash?
100%. I think a lot of people, they loved Walk the Line. They loved Joaquin Phoenix, which Walk the Line is a great movie. Joaquin Phoenix is fantastic, and it probably should have won his first Oscar there. And I think people were kind of put aside like, wait, what? Like, why are you making fun of the great Johnny Cash, who just had died 3 years prior to this movie coming out? Or maybe even actually sooner than that, or longer than that, I believe, because he was 2003, I think. So 5 years before this movie came out. People were still dealing with it.
The reason I ask that is because my dad was one of those. He was a big Johnny Cash fan, and he felt offended that they were making Walk Hard because he felt that it was just making light of Johnny Cash, which isn't the case. I
No.
mean, yes, they take it as, they pick from it.
Yes,
but
well,
it's not meant to...
he's a caricature of Johnny Cash, and that's obvious.
Exactly.
But the movie isn't making fun of Johnny Cash; it's making fun of biopics.
Yes.
And that's where something I had to deal with this with Tropic Thunder with my own wife, because she was like, oh well, they're making fun of war. I'm like, no, they're not making fun of war and soldiers. They're making fun of war movies. So when you watch Tropic Thunder, if you've seen a ton of war movies, you're going to go, oh, that's from Hamburger Hill, or that's from Platoon, or that's from this movie. Like, they're not making fun of they're not making fun of the military, and that was a misconception with that movie. The misconception with this movie is they're making fun of purposely Johnny Cash. That's not what they were doing. If anything, they were paying respect to Johnny Cash and kind of turning it into this big thing. It just, again, box office-wise, it didn't work. I think it's grown an audience since 2008 when it came out. So that will lead me to my next one. And the next one, I know I had touted this one a lot when it came out, and I think people started to watch it finally. So you're welcome, makers of Popstar Never Stop, Never Stopping. This movie is fantastic, and it stars Andy Samberg.
It's nice that we got Andy Samberg back on the show. He hasn't been on since the second episode when we reviewed... what was the movie?
I
forgot the title.
Palm Springs. Yes, we talked about Andy Samberg when we reviewed Palm Springs, a movie which we both like. So now he's back. And Popstar Never Stop, Never Stopping, 2016 American mockumentary comedy film. So this one shot like a documentary, like a music documentary. If you don't have to have seen it, but if you know that there's a Justin Bieber documentary out there, I believe it's called Never Stopping or something along those lines. So that's what this was kind of poking its fun at. And the same thing here. They're not making fun of Justin Bieber. They're just making fun of this style of rock documentary, which in this case is a pop star documentary. And Andy Samberg plays the lead role. Let me get to the cast here. Hold on a second. Connor, a.k.a. Kid Connor Friel, or Connor for real. Jorma Tacone plays Owen, Kid Contact. He's the DJ. Akiva Schaffer plays Lawrence, Kid Brain. So they kind of start out as like a Beastie Boys. And then Connor gets way too big. They treat it like an NSYNC type thing. So Connor gets way too big, and he becomes this superstar. And he takes his DJ with him, but he leaves the other guy behind who's like, Keev is working on a farm, living on a farm, and making songs about things that are in his Jeep. This is another one. The soundtrack is spectacular. They really put their heart into this movie in every song that they wrote, and the spoofs are freaking hilarious. Seal is fantastic in it as himself. That one scene that he has, it's really great. It's a really great film. It doesn't get talked about a lot. It didn't make a lot of money. It really should have been a bigger hit, in my opinion. But I think it just goes to show that spoof movies maybe just don't do as well as we all thought they used to. Maybe we just are coming from a time when they were where they were making lots of money.
But when you talk about the spoof movies, like Scary Movie, High School Movie, or whatever other
date movie, date movie, not another teen movie, yeah. I think,
not another teen movie.
Yeah, and I enjoyed some of those movies too, but I do think that these movies do require a little bit of thinking to them. I'm not going to sit here and say that Popstar and Walk Hard are like super intelligent films, but they were made by smart people, and I think sometimes when you're doing that, people aren't as interested because you are trying to tell them something on top of being really spoofy and funny. And with something like Scary Movie, and like I said, I like those movies, and not that the Wayans brothers are dumb or anything, but those movies were made to be stupid, and that was what their goal was, and they succeeded, and they made lots of money off of it. These movies, on the other hand, like I said, I think there's a little bit to them, a little bit more to them. They put a lot into them because of the soundtracks. Again, they made entire albums for these movies. I mean, the Walk Hard soundtrack, I think, has like 20 songs on it. It's ridiculous. And the same effort went into every song. It's just fantastic. And I really hope that people listen to this and will go and search these movies out if they haven't seen them, because they are great and they are hysterical. All right, Wayne, so what's your number 2?
All right, as I already hinted at, I'm sticking with the 50s rock theme. the 1987 movie La Bamba, which is when we talked about the tragic events of Clear Lake, Iowa, and the day the music died. Richie Valens was only 17 years old, still in high school when he was killed in the plane crash. Even being so young, he had hits with the title track La Bamba. He had a slow song dedicated to his high school love. The title is called Donna. And I'm drawing a blank on another one of some of his songs. He had so much success for a 17-year-old kid. And again, that was really unheard of back in the 50s. Now we have like pop stars, tweenie boppers, I guess, or whatever you want to call them. But again, Richie Valens, Ricardo Valenzuela is his real name. They changed his name so it would be more American sounding.
As they tend to do.
Yep. There was, he wrestled with this to giving up his Hispanic heritage, but let me just run through the cast really quick. Lou Diamond Phillips does a fantastic job portraying Richie Valens. Isa Morales plays his older brother Bob. Rosanna DeSoto, Connie Valenzuela, their mother. Rosie Morales, played by Elizabeth Pena. Joe Pantoliano, forgive me if I'm saying that incorrectly, plays Bob Keenan, his manager, who kind of convinces him to go with the name Richie Valens instead of Ricardo Valenzuela, and really does a fantastic job guiding him through and helping him out. One of the interesting facts about this movie is Richie is scared to death of flying and has a recurring nightmare that he's going to die in a plane crash. And the fact that this happens is a little bit eerie. This La Bamba hits on multiple levels. They were migrant farm workers in California. They lived in the orchard in a shanty town, basically. And it's rough. It's kind of glazed over, because this is a happy rock biopic, but you really see the kind of conditions that these people, folks had to deal with, at this time, not having a lot of money, just trying to scrape by to survive and whatnot. And, somehow they're able to pull enough money. They move out of that shanty town. They get established into, but their house is not in the best of conditions and whatnot, but it just shows where the humble beginnings that Richie had to come from, and his musical talent, broken down, hand-me-down instruments that aren't in the best condition, and he still made it work. He still taught himself how to play and whatnot. All right, let me give you guys just the official rundown of what we got here. Let me find it. The biographical story of the rise from nowhere of early rock and roll singer Richie Valens, who died at the age of 17 in a plane crash with Buddy Holly and the Big Bopper, J.P. Richardson. This movie does a great job portraying relationships as well. His older brother Bob is estranged from the family. He comes back and kind of leads them away from the migrant farm. That's how they're able to do that, along with the hard work of the family and whatnot. So it portrays Richie being moved into a more suburban area where he's kind of looked down upon because he isn't white. His girlfriend's father is not a fan of his daughter dating Richie, and basically puts his foot down, says that she can't date him or whatnot. But hey, what they say about unrequited love and obstacles in the way. Love's gonna do what love's gonna do, and they have a nice high school romance, a little bit dramatized for the movie or whatnot. But hey, when your boyfriend is a rock and roll performer and he's on the radio and he writes a song about you, I guess you got to be doing something pretty well. So. I'm rambling on about this movie a little bit because, this is another one of the films from my childhood that gives me memories of my father because we watched it several times. Mm-hmm. The soundtrack is fantastic. What separates this one from the Buddy Holly story is how they handle the crash and the end. The Buddy Holly story just basically ends with the plane taking off and then kind of flying off into the darkness. La Bamba, the crash isn't the end of the movie. the crash happens, and then it cuts the scene. It cuts to the family. The brother is working on a car across town. Mom is doing laundry when the radio cuts in, and it just has this somber breaking news out of Clear Lake, Iowa. And basically it's saying, that confirmed dead, Buddy Holly, 32, J.P. Richardson, such and such.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, J.P. Richardson was 32, the Big Bopper. The Buddy Holly and obviously Richie were incredibly young. Mm-hmm. And it basically, you just see the shock and anguish just in everybody experiencing it and dealing with it, and the funeral the procession to the funeral, and Sleepwalk by, I'm going to find out who that by, because there's this really iconic track. The final scenes where they're, the procession to the funeral, and the song Sleepwalk by Santo and Johnny is being played, and this is it's all melody acoustics of just guitars just playing. You just feel the tragedy and the melodies and whatnot, and basically the movie ends with Richie's brother just screaming his name out on a bridge, just trying to come to grips with his loss, because Richie and his brother Bob had a really tumultuous on-again, off-again relationship where, Bob was obviously jealous of Richie's talents and whatnot, but he still loves him because it's his brother, and they're able to reconnect. Bob's trying to figure out how to be a good father, because they did not have a good, paternal role model growing up. So, overall, it's just a fantastic movie that isn't just about the music. And the music is really a supporting actor to this. Mm-hmm. One of my favorite scenes is where they're trying to record a song, and they got to do take after take after take until Bob Keane, played by Joey Pants, feel that they got the right energy to it. And it's just a learning experience for Richie and Bob, and just what goes into making a hit record. And again, you gotta, this is another one. If you haven't seen it and you like the music, definitely check out La Bamba.
Now, this one I have seen, and I agree with you. La Bamba is fantastic, and Lou Diamond Phillips, a.k.a. LDP, is great in a lot of things, and he's great in this. An early role for him. It reminds me, you were talking a lot, it reminded me a lot of Selena, on how in Selena they actually they don't show the gunshot, but you hear it, and then you get the aftermath of what happened after she died, and the shock, and in everybody's faces, her family and stuff. A little different in Selena, like her family was, I believe a lot of them were there because it was one of her big concerts, and she was family with a lot of the people in the band, obviously. But that's kind of what it reminded me of when you were talking about the ending, and it's very similar in Selena, where they just kind of stay on that, where you feel the raw emotion coming off of everybody in that movie, and it's the same in La Bamba, I think.
Right. I'm glad you brought up Selena, because we were alive when that happened, and it's I wasn't a huge Selena fan, but I knew who she was. It was just kind of holy cow, what happened?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Whoa.
Honestly, I don't even remember. Yeah, I'm only a year younger than you, and I remember the movie more than I do the actual incident. So, but so some sad movies, obviously, we're recommending, but they're very good. All right, so I'm going to move on to my last one, but before I do that, I will do the honorable mentions before Wayne and I get to our last picks. We've mentioned a couple already, but I'll list them anyway. Walk the Line, Johnny Cash, great movie. Joaquin Phoenix is fantastic. Ray, Jamie Foxx is amazing in that. This is Spinal Tap, another comedy, kind of a spoof one about a traveling rock band, and they kind of turned into a rock band themselves. Hilarious movie. Rockstar with Mark Wahlberg. We didn't talk about that one.
That was almost my third pick because I love that movie.
That's a movie kind of
songs.
Yes, inspired by 80s and 90s music. Tenacious D, The Pick of Destiny. This one, I will honestly tell you, it's not a great movie, but it's a close movie to me because I'm a huge Tenacious D fan. I saw it in theaters. Seeing it in theaters was epic. I loved it. Another Jack Black, School of Rock. A lot of fun.
Another great one.
Yep. Bohemian Rhapsody, we talked about a little bit with Rami Malek as Freddie Mercury. Very good movie. Not as good as Rocketman, in my opinion, but good movie.
I agree. You're correct.
The Dirt. We didn't talk about this one, but that's the Motley Crue one on Netflix. Very good.
Absolutely fantastic.
Yes.
Very raunchy, but very real. I know our friend Vinny Barbera is a big fan. He actually the one who really introduced me and got me into the crew.
Yes.
And I will thank him forever for that because I love the crew.
Yeah. And Doug Cabrera, also a big fan of that one because he loves that kind of music as well. The Runaways, which with Kristen Stewart and Dakota Fanning. I really like this movie. It's about the band that Joan Jett was in before she broke out. Really good. Rocky Horror Picture Show. It's a rock and roll inspired musical. I'm actually not a huge fan of it, but I know if I didn't mention it, people would probably be upset. It's it is what it is. Detroit Rock City, another one that I'm kind of fond of. Yep. And I'm not even a Kiss fan. That's the thing about it. I like a lot of these movies. I'm not even fans of most of the music that they're about, but I respect the movies, and I thought that was a good movie. Almost Famous, we talked about in another episode, our Philip Seymour Hoffman episode.
Of all time.
Yeah.
Fantastic. We don't need to dwell on it because I'm
great
sure
movie.
Do it again, but
A Star is Born. Pick one. There's like 6 of them. Let's see. The Rocker, which is an underrated movie in my opinion. Rainn Wilson plays a drummer who has to go live with his sister and ends up forming a band with his nephew and his nephew's friends. The Doors, about Jim Morrison, starring Val Kilmer. Purple Rain, which we touched upon in our Prince episode. Sunset Strip is a movie that's kind of behind the scenes of the music industry. I enjoyed it. What's Love Got to Do with It is the Tina Turner movie. Whiplash, great movie. Miles, white guy, I forget his name. He's in it. Miles Teller, that's it. Whiplash, fantastic. Rock and Roll High School 1 and 2. I mentioned 2 because no one likes that movie, but it stars Corey Feldman, and it's fantastic. And if you don't like it, I'll fight you on it. Just as we were talking, I wrote down some too. That Thing You Do, Wayne's World, Blinded by the Light, which is another movie that came out recently that's about a man who's inspired by the music of Bruce Springsteen. Again, I'm not a huge Springsteen fan. I thought this movie was fantastic, really good. Yesterday is the Beatles one as well. That one, I didn't like that one as much, but it's okay.
That Thing You Do is an underrated movie right there. I love that one.
And let's see, Bill and Ted. Mentioned Bill and Ted because all three, they're about, the second and third movies are about them creating the song to unite the world. So it's, they're rock movies. Get On Up, I'm Not There, which is the Bob Dylan song, which is weird because it's Bob Dylan. Hustle and Flow, Straight Outta Compton, Notorious, Black Snake Moan, Selena, which we just mentioned, and lastly, I'll mention before I get to my pick, High Fidelity with John Cusack and Jack Black. And that's a movie that's about music, and it's about kind of the love for music. Really good. So my final pick is going to be 8 Mile, directed by Curtis Hanson, starring Marshall Mathers, a.k.a. Eminem, in a role that he was born to play as B. Rabbit. And so Eminem, this movie is basically about Eminem's life, but it's not. And I chose it for that reason because it shows that how someone's life can inspire a movie and how the stuff that happens in it isn't necessarily true, but it still rings that way, And
especially if you had one shot, one opportunity.
Yes, exactly. Curtis Hanson, a director I really like, the late Curtis Hanson, he passed away a few years ago. Did this movie, and so when he did L.A. Confidential. So when I found out the guy that did L.A. Confidential was doing 8 Mile starring Eminem, as an Eminem fan, I'm like, oh my god, like this is gonna be the best movie ever made because it's got Curtis Hanson and it's Eminem. And I wasn't far off, to be honest, because I think a lot of people thought this movie wasn't gonna be very good. Because can Eminem act? What's the story gonna be like? And he does an admirable performance. He's not great in it. He shouldn't have been nominated or anything. I'm not going to say anything like that. But he does a good job. And it just...
believable for sure.
Yeah. And it's a movie that just kind of tells a story of someone who had to kind of fight for what they wanted. And I think it allowed them to do, with not making it directly about Eminem, it allows them to do a lot of different things. And more cinematic things that maybe didn't happen in his life. But they're able to do in this movie. And again, as the other 3 movies I mentioned, this one has a killer soundtrack. And it's mostly brand new Eminem songs with other artists in there as well. And the other performances, Micaiah Pfeiffer, Anthony Mackie, both very good. The late Brittany Murphy gives a really good performance here as well. This movie I think it hit at the right time. It was one of those things too, and this is a different genre, but to kind of, when the South Park movie came out, it was only like a year or two after the show hit. So people were wondering, is this the time? Is this going to be big now? And with Eminem and 8 Mile, it was the same thing. It was like 3 years after he became famous. It was the year that Marshall Mathers LP, either the year it came out or the year after it came out. And so it's like, are we riding this high? Is this going to be something that lasts? And I think they created a piece of art that is going to actually last for a long time.
Absolutely. I still watch the last 20 minutes of this movie regularly just because, the rap battles at the end are just fantastically entertaining. And, just the talent that is on display. And even though it's, it may be mapped out or pre-written, just the way it's performed and delivered is just fantastic. The energy.
Yes. The whole movie is it's fun from beginning to end. It's dramatic. It's sad. You feel for the character. You feel for B-Rabbit, knowing that it's Eminem really that you're feeling for, because while he's obviously been very successful of late and has lots of money and stuff, he did kind of have to claw his way to the top. And I think this movie does a good job of showing that and showing what that takes and the drive that you have to do that. The best comparison I could probably make to this movie would be Purple Rain. And now people are like, well, Purple Rain's kind of cheesy. Purple Rain is a product of its time and of its person. It's Prince being Prince in a movie that's loosely based on Prince, but kind of in a more wonderful, fantastical way that he wanted to display it. And 8 Mile is very similar. It's just more very gritty and more down to earth than Purple Rain was.
For sure.
But it definitely, I think it has a lot of the same elements to it. And I can't remember if Purple Rain won an Oscar. I think it did for score or song or something. But Eminem also won an Oscar for 8 Mile for the song. Everybody knows the song. Lose Yourself. And he was not there to accept it, so he was at the Oscars like 2 or 3 years ago, and people were confused, and they're like, well, it's because he wasn't there. So he finally gave him a shot to like go and perform. He had one last shot to perform that song at the Oscars. Get that there. All right, so anyway, this movie is just fantastic. It made a crap ton of money, which they didn't expect. Huge, successful movie, and then he never really acted again. So it was one of those things like, I think he did it.
I'm actually happy they didn't try to make a sequel out of this.
Of course. And I would be okay if he wanted to be in other movies, but obviously I think he felt that he needed to tell his story. And then after that, he was basically like, I'm out. Prince tried a couple more movies and didn't work out. Eminem made one movie, won an Oscar. It made almost $300 million worldwide, and he's like, that's it. I'm done. And it worked out. So I'd say that he was successful in that. And if you haven't seen this movie, definitely check it out.
It really hits on just the socioeconomical aspects of it, too. Like, the fact that, these folks in, like, this Detroit, Michigan area are, they're so destitute that, working their minimum wage job, they need the overtime just to make bills and survive.
Yeah.
And it's a competition, who does the best job, you're getting the overtime. And Kim Basinger does a fantastic job portraying the mom.
She does.
In the trailer park, like, where her big break is winning at bingo.
Yep.
I mean, if that's what you're relying on to, live.
So you get your high. Yeah. It's
like, it's just, just stopping and, looking past the music and, the, B-Rabbit's essential, just focusing on him and just looking at just like the area. It's like it's a rundown trailer park, and he and Micaiah Pfeiffer, when they're making fun of Leonard Skinner, or not making fun, but they're using Sweet Home Alabama, but putting their own words to it.
Yeah.
I live at home in a trailer.
Yes.
The whole deal. It's just like, wow. And the film just really hits on that subtly, and you can easily overlook it if you're not really paying attention to it.
Yes, exactly.
I just felt that it needed to be recognized for that.
No, for sure. Yeah, definitely. It's like I said, it's really probably a lot better movie than it even really deserved to be, just being in the kind of music type category. But it hit on a lot of notes, and I think people resonated with it very well. And obviously Eminem that album is freaking that soundtrack is just amazing. So like that definitely helped as well. All right, Wayne, let's go to your final pick.
All right. Well, I'm going to throw a curveball. I was going to go with Great Balls of Fire, the 1989 Jerry Lee Lewis biopic, but I'm not really a fan of the man and his personal choices and decisions, so I'm going to switch it up, and I am actually going to go with the 2014 movie Jersey Boys.
Ah, nice. Okay.
Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons. This basically focuses on Frankie Valli, Francisco Castelluccio, who changed his name to Frankie Valli with an I. That's one of the things that they hit on early in the movie, making fun of him a little bit there for, wanting to don't lose your heritage and whatnot. But this is the story of four young men from the wrong side of the tracks in New Jersey who came together to form the iconic 60s group, the Four Seasons. Now, Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons, or however you know them, they're probably one of the most recognizable. Would you call them R&B, hip-hop, doo-wop maybe is the correct?
Doo-wop would probably be the correct, yeah.
Because Frankie Valli himself has probably one of the most distinctive voices I think I've ever heard. I guess he would be a soprano. How you doing? No pun intended. A little pun intended. Very high-pitched, very... When you take the song Walk Like a Man, but in the way he sings it
It's a great song.
Yeah. It's kind of almost, I don't want to use the term hypocritical, but, you walk like a man, talk like...
I think there was some irony in the way that they did it, in the way... That was
the word I was trying to grasp at, but I couldn't get it.
Yeah, well, because you got to remember, too, and I haven't seen the movie, but just based on knowing their story, they grew up with a lot of tough guys, a lot of Italians, and I think that was... maybe a little bit of a rub on them, like, hey, I'm going to make the song and sing it in a completely high-pitched voice. So
it's funny because Joe Pesci is actually Joe Pesci, the actor, was partially responsible for getting them famous and getting them signed to a label.
Yeah, I remember you telling me that. Yeah, it's crazy.
But John Lloyd Young portrays Frankie Valli. Vincent Piazza, Tommy DeVito. Tommy DeVito is kind of Frankie Valli's mentor, like a big brother in a sense.
And Vincent Piazza was from Boardwalk Empire, if people haven't seen that show. Or have seen that show.
He was on Rescue Me for a little while there, too, with Dennis Leary.
Yep.
Steve Sciarippa plays Vito. Steve Sciarippa from Sopranos, so anytime I can give some Sopranos love. Christopher Walken plays Gip DiCarlo. He is... he's one of our friends, if you know what I'm saying.
Well, it sounds like I'll have to watch this movie because I haven't seen it, and it's got a pretty good cast.
Obviously, the score is fantastic, but it talks, just about their struggles for success and getting to be taken seriously. Frankie, in and of himself, in his early days of not being taken seriously, he's always thought, I had a kid, he can sing, he's talented. You got to watch out for him, though, because we want him to succeed.
Yeah.
And, he had a lot of people pulling for him from the neighborhood and whatnot.
We should also mention directed by Clint Eastwood as well. I don't think we mentioned that.
I was getting there. That was going to be my...
Oh, sorry. Sorry, I jumped ahead.
Good. I was taking too long to acknowledge that Clint Eastwood directed this masterpiece. Jersey Boys actually started out as a Broadway play.
Mm-hmm.
It was adapted to film in 2014. It really shows the behind-the-scenes struggle of the group and how they're... I don't want to say their demise or their breakup, but basically Tommy DeVito gets them in financial trouble. They owe a lot of money to some people you do not want to owe money to, supposedly. So basically all Frankie does is tour to pay off this debt. It costs him his family. He loses a child to substance abuse. It wasn't the happy-go-lucky thing. Hey, he's a rich, famous pop star. He spent all of his life on the road, apparently. Just, I don't know. It's fantastically done.
Well, I think when
Go ahead.
When you hear a hit Broadway musical, too, you don't always think of how depressing some of that stuff can be. But the fact that, like you said, he had even though he was doing what he wanted to do, it wasn't easy all the time. And it's good that they bring that across in what originally was a Broadway play and now a movie.
This is really fun. It's fun for me because it really breaks the fourth wall where the actor will go from acting to being the narrator and talking directly to you looking in the camera.
Mm-hmm.
Tommy DeVito and Frankie Valli are your main narrators, but even other members of the band will do that as well. Let's see here. Got to throw Catherine Narducci some love. She plays Frankie's mother. She is also from The Sopranos.
Yeah.
So, like I said, anytime I give Sopranos love, I'm gonna.
It's like Eastwood just like watched The Sopranos to find out who he was going to cast. That and Boardwalk Empire, and he's like, all right, give me all the Italians.
Well, hey, that's how they did Sopranos, because so many people who were in Sopranos were in Goodfellas.
Yep, Goodfellas, and then a lot of them went on to be in Boardwalk Empire and a lot of the other mobster shows, yeah.
But, again, I love, as I said, with the Buddy Holly story and La Bamba, I am a huge fan of this music from this time frame. I know the rock and the doo-wop, not exactly the same thing, but they do kind of go hand in hand because...
Mm-hmm. No, yeah, this was meant to just be about music movies, you know, and it doesn't have to be, not musicals, but just movies about music. So that's what Straight Outta Compton fits in, 8 Mile fits in. I mean, those are hip-hop, those aren't necessarily considered rock and roll, but, you know, those are the music, that's the genre that they fall into because that's what we have. That's what started it, I guess. So rock movies started it, so everything kind of gets grouped into that.
I was just looking at the notes here. It looks like Tommy DeVito actually just passed away at the age of 92 in September of this year.
Oh, geez. Okay. All right.
Hey.
Rest in peace, Tommy.
Yep.
All right. So that wraps up our rock and roll movies, and we're going to go into our review of the week. And I will give the rundown of the movie we watched. It was a Netflix original. It's called His House. And it is, let me read the beginning plot here. Bull and Real are refugees fleeing with their daughter Nyagak from war-torn South Sudan. To cross the Mediterranean, they brave stormy waters. They're trying to get away, and the daughter, goes overboard, and she dies. So they end up in England, and they're refugees, and they are given this house that's often referred to by many of the white people in the movie being bigger than the house that they own. So, like, you should be happy with this no matter what, because our houses aren't as big. Matt Smith being, like, the only recognizable actor, I think, really, in this movie. He's British. He was on Doctor Who. I haven't even seen Doctor Who, and I just know him from that. It stars... These names, I may not get them perfectly correct, but I'm going to try. Wunmi Masaku as Real, which is the wife. Sope Dirisu as Bull. Matt Smith as Mark. Javier Botet, which now that I see his name, I know exactly who he played. This is a horror film for people that aren't familiar. It was a ghost story. Wayne did not know that going in, as far as I know, because I didn't tell him.
I do.
Okay.
It's the worst kind because it deals with demonology.
Yes. Once I started watching it, I'm like, oh, this isn't going to be good. Let's see. So Javier Botet plays a lot of creatures in Guillermo del Toro movies, as well as Doug Jones. This is the other guy that plays all the creatures too. Botet kind of in the lesser... Botet mostly gets like the Guillermo del Toro produced movies, not the directed movies. For those, he goes to Doug Jones. So knowing Botet was in this, I could tell you right now there is like a demon in this movie, and that's who he played. So it starts out with them in this house, and then weird things start to happen. They start getting haunted by their past. They see things from back home. They see their daughter drowning over and over again. Sometimes they'll wake up and they're in the middle of the ocean, even though they're in their house, and then they snap out of it. It's a lot of good ghost effects and creature effects, I think. I like this movie. I didn't love it, but I liked it. This year has been a good year for genre films. A lot of good horror films this year. I think I don't know if it has to do with 2020 and how it's been. I think it might just be because, we're all lacking for solid entertainment. So when something like this comes along, it's an original horror film. It's about migrants coming over from another country. So it's very topical with what's happening today, not only here in America, but also in England. They're having a lot of the same issues with racism and all that stuff that we're having. And I think it really touches on a lot of that stuff. And the performances I thought were really good. The scares were pretty good. It wasn't like I wasn't jumping out I wasn't jumping out of. Wayne made a face, everybody, so you can't see it. But
I was jumping. I'm a coward. You guys know.
but there were some moments where I was like, "Oh my god!" Like, whoa. So there's some good stuff in this, some good effects, and overall, I thought it was a fun movie. Wayne, what did you think? Knowing it's a horror film and not your cup of tea usually.
As a coward, I wasn't a huge fan. I respected the work and the acting and whatnot. They did a great job making it kind of seem like, all right, is this actually happening, or is there some mental illness or some PTSD going on? That's the biggest thing I thought was really well done. Again, the touching on the aspect of where they were put and placed, and like, here's a pile of crap to live in, but you should be thankful that you're here.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
MAGA.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of that. No, it was obviously.
I guess it would be Migi.
Yeah.
Miga. Make England great again.
Yes.
Sorry. Oh, all right, go.
No, and they obviously, like I said, it's very topical, so they hit on a lot of points like that. And it's funny too to see Matt Smith's character kind of play it as like, well, I'm not racist, but he does that quite a bit to kind of throw the buck to the other people. And I do, we do understand, obviously, the people like that are going to have bosses, but I think their intention here was to show, like, okay, so maybe this guy isn't a complete racist or a complete piece of trash, but he could probably do a little more to help than he's doing. And passing the buck to other people just kind of, it makes it look bad, and that's what it did for him. It made it for that character, and that was the intention.
Yeah, well done, but still, you're a dirtbag.
Yeah, exactly. It does deal. I like that you brought up PTSD because I think that's a lot of what it's dealing with too. It's kind of what we deal with our own demons, and then it basically takes a supernatural look into that of what our own demons can manifest into. And I thought that was a really cool concept for this movie. Is you got these people that were running away to this country. There is a twist. We're not going to give that twist away. But they were running away to this new country, away from their old country because they didn't want to die. And they get there, and they're still terrified. They're still fearful, and it's kind of having to overcome their past to move on into their future. And it really, like I said, it does a really good job. It's it's like an hour and a half long too, so it's not very long. I think if you're looking for something original, something to enjoy, definitely check it out on Netflix. For all those people that say there are no original movies anymore, this year has proven that there are. But people just aren't watching them because they watch the big budget movies, which there's no problem with. Wayne and I watch those too. But there's a lot of these indie type of films that get through the cracks because people want to focus on the Marvel movies or the whatever the next big budget franchise is going to be, Avatar, So there are these movies, and I think they're getting highlighted a lot because of the pandemic. And I think there's not a lot that's positive about the pandemic, and especially the movie industry has been trashed right now because of it. But these little movies are kind of getting brighter lights shined on them because of it. And I think that's important. And I think this one is another one that I think deserves to have the light shined on it. Check it out on Netflix. I think you'll enjoy it if you like horror movies. If you're Wayne, obviously, if you're scared of movies, maybe don't watch it.
Definitely still watch it. It will have an effect on you. It had an effect on me. It's just, I'm a coward. Like, I wear it as a badge of honor. So, I'm glad you brought up just what 2020 has done for original film. When the things that we've watched recently and reviewed, The Trial of the Chicago 7, the other Joseph Gordon-Levitt movie where he's the cop trying to chase down the drug.
The superhero one, yeah.
Those would have been great to see in the theater, but still, original stories that were fantastically done, highly entertaining. Enola Holmes.
Enola Holmes. Project Power was the other.
Project Power, yeah. These are fantastic films that we're getting. And just because we have to watch them in a different way, we really do need to acknowledge that 2020, for all the shit that it's brought, has really done some things for these smaller original movies. And
yes,
great on them.
Yes, it has. And the only thing I will say, and this is what other few people in the film business will probably say, is it's going to make the film studios go, well, then we need to spend less money on making movies then. And they're going to be like, oh, damn it. They're not going to have any budgets anymore. Because I listen to a lot of directors and they talk about how hard it is to get money for for these films. And now that they see that they could be successful, you know what I mean? It's one of those things that's a trend. It's always like, oh, so we could pay less money and it still comes out really good?
You know what that reminds me of right now? A certain employer that we used to both work for.
Yeah.
Oh, you're getting it done with 4 people when you should have a crew of 12?
Yeah.
Oh, well,
yeah.
you don't need more money or more people.
Yes.
Just
Or me,
keep
yeah.
doing what you're doing.
Me stupidly going, oh, no, I'll take on that extra work without asking for any more money, assuming it was going to lead to more money. Yeah. Yeah, that's part of that's on me. But anyway, I digress. So we had we weren't trying to, for the next segment, Gone But Not Forgotten, we weren't sure who we were going to talk about this week. And then we got the unfortunate news yesterday that Sean Connery had passed away at 90 years old. And that was basically decided it right then and there. It was like, okay,
Absolutely.
well, it's fresh in our minds. Let's talk about the man, the myth, the legend that is Sean Connery. And he was a legend, obviously, as everybody knows. He hasn't acted in 17 years. Really. He did some voiceover work, I think. But acting-wise, he hasn't done it in 17 years.
Was The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen the last one?
That was his last feature film. It was 2003. The only thing he said that would have gotten him out of bed was Indiana Jones 4, and he turned that down. So that was the only thing that he...
And now we understand why.
Yeah, that was the only thing I think that he was seriously considering coming back for. So Sean Connery is... I don't know how many people know this, because I just know a lot of random things about movies and actors. He's Scottish, first off. Was born August 25th, 1930. Died October 31st, 2020, on Halloween. Very sad. He started out as a bodybuilder and like a male model, and he got noticed. And that was one of those things, he got noticed by just like a producer or something, and that led him to go get cast in movies. And then eventually he was obviously cast, as everybody knows him, as James Bond. And that's kind of what... I don't think it was his first movie, but it's what catapulted him into stardom. And that was what everybody would basically know him for until the day he died. I mean, yes, he did other movies, but yesterday when you read the news, I mean, how many articles did you come across, Wayne, same as me, that said, James Bond actor, James Bond actor, James Bond actor, or the first James Bond on film dies, blah, blah, blah. And it's... So just to see that, and you're just like, wow, this guy really had an impact on cinema and on the history of film by just being that one character, 6 times, 7 times, something like that?
Yeah. I mean, he won his lone Academy Award for The Untouchables.
Yep.
Supporting actor with Kevin Costner, and was that 87, I believe?
87, yeah, that sounds right, yeah. And Robert...
1987 for the portrayal of Jim Malone.
Yep, him, Costner, Robert De Niro. Yeah,
I mean, obviously, we could go on and on about, his portrayal of John Patrick Mason in The Rock, 1996 with Nicolas Cage. Welcome to The Rock.
And as one of our friends, JT, put on Facebook yesterday, Michael Bay's best movie, and I would agree. Even though I love the Bad Boys movies, The Rock is actually a good movie, in my opinion. And Sean Connery really kind of makes that role his own, and it's not something you expect to see him in. It kind of led to him doing a few more action films after that, which I was grateful for, because some of those were good too, I thought. But that movie, yeah. I think people remember it's James Bond, Indiana Jones, and The Rock. And then probably after The Rock is Highlander would be my guess, because he had a big role in that series as well.
I liked Entrapment, 1999.
I was going to bring that one up too. That's one of those movies that when I saw it, I really liked it a lot. I've seen it a couple times since, and I still like it. I just feel like a lot of people don't talk about it, and it's a good movie. Him, Ving Rhames, Catherine Zeta-Jones, just a solid film overall. I was reading there are some movies I have to watch of his that I haven't seen. Zardos, I never watched. I didn't know right now I'm seeing that he was in Murder on the Orient Express, the first one. So I'll have to watch that. Just a lot of older stuff that he did in the 70s and early 80s that I haven't seen. Obviously, I've seen most of the Bond stuff. Highlander, I'm a huge fan of. He's great in Highlander. The Untouchables is fantastic.
1996, he was the voice of Draco the Dragon in Dragonheart with...
Dennis Quaid, right?
Yes. I was like, all right, wait, hold on. Which Quaid is it?
Yeah, which Quaid? Which Dennis? Yeah.
It is Dennis Quaid and David Thewlis.
Oh, David Thewlis,
from
yeah.
the Harry Potter.
Yep. I like him a lot.
Movies.
Um,
Jason Isaacs is in that. But yeah, he plays the voice of Draco the Dragon. Not the greatest period piece, but the ending is absolutely heart-wrenching and beautiful. Yep. So, yeah, if you ever need something to watch, check it out. Personally, though, because the other ones, the subsequent sequels to Dragonheart are no bueno.
Yes. One of the films, another film they talk about as being one of his best, too, and I would agree, The Hunt for Red October.
Yes.
Him, Alec Baldwin, Sam Neill, huge international cast in that one. Lots of Brits, lots of Australians, at least one American in Alec Baldwin. Very good movie. It's the kind of the start of the Jack Ryan movie verse. The first played by Alec Baldwin. A lot of people don't know that because Harrison Ford kind of took it and ran with it for 2 movies. But yeah, good movie, solid flick. Really, if you haven't seen it, you definitely have to check it out. Here, I'm going to bring up one too that obviously, maybe we'll talk about in a different podcast. But Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. Now, most people these days find this movie very cheesy. I still love it. Alan Rickman is a great villain. But everyone, I don't know if people remember that King Richard, who's not in the whole movie, is played by Sean Connery at the end of the movie. And it's a fantastic little cameo from him. Great role. Other ones that I grew up on in the 90s that I really liked, Rising Sun with Wesley Snipes. It's kind of like an action spy thriller. Just Cause with Lawrence Fishburne. I thought that was a really good movie. I've seen that a handful of times. That's like they play 2 cops that are trying to solve a murder, like a serial killer. And
Finding Forrester.
That's freaking. I'm at a loss for words because I love that movie. That movie is so good. Gus Van Sant.
You're the man now, dog.
Yes, Gus Van Sant directed it. I believe it was his next one after Good Will Hunting. If not, it was his next big movie after Good Will Hunting. And just introduced the world to Rob Brown as well. That was like his debut movie. Busta Rhymes was in that, as you just did the line that Connery does that Busta Rhymes kind of did earlier. So just a great movie, a great performance from him. Him and Rob Brown have really great chemistry in that movie. It's one of those movies that I don't think of watching, but then my wife will put it on, and I find myself watching it with her like nonstop. And it's so good. The performances are great. Matt Damon has a cameo in it at the end. Of course he does, because he's like the king of cameos. But yeah, real solid movie. Definitely like that one a lot. I was not a big fan of The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. I kind of want to watch it again just to see. But that was. He was also.
I liked A League of Extraordinary Gentlemen just because it's kind of like your anti-superhero movie.
Yeah.
But I'm with you. I would need to watch it again. I liked it, but wasn't anything that I needed to ever really mark down to watch again.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with that movie was like the other thing that bothered me, and I never even read the graphic novel, but they added an American character, Tom Sawyer.
For Shane West?
Yeah, that was not in the book. Just they're like, oh, well, Americans won't be able to understand British people. So they like added an American into it, which I thought was kind of silly for their reasoning like behind. And they added an American and then cast Shane West. Like maybe cast someone who's actually, going to be famous 5 years later. Like that's why
you got to remember though, Shane West was really popular at that time.
He was.
Walk to Remember and a bunch of other crap.
That was their attempt to make him an action star, and it failed horribly.
Let's look up Shane West really quick here, and A League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, A Walk to Remember, and nothing else that I recognize.
Yeah, exactly.
Not to knock them in, but, they went with the guy who was hot at the time, and, it didn't pan out for him.
Yeah, exactly.
He was in Dracula 2000. Look out, there it is, done.
The end of his career? I think actually League was after, so.
Yeah, Yeah, it was.
So, and obviously, he's done a lot of movies. He's been in a lot of things. 93 credits or 94 credits, whatever it was. But obviously, the last one we'll talk about is, I think, one that everyone goes to, and that's Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. As Indy's father, and a role that would, kind of, I think for a lot of people, makes that movie stand higher than the other ones because he just added this gravitas to it. And so, I think Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade was just something that everybody knows him from, and adding him into that franchise, I think, helped a lot. And it made that series, I think, stand the test of time. I think on its, with obviously Harrison Ford is Harrison Ford, but I think having both of them in that movie was very special and made that movie, I think, even more so now that he just passed away. Kind of like you want to watch it to get that father-son connection between the two of them. So,
Last Crusade was definitely my favorite of the four, and just epic performance. Just with Henry Jones Jr.
Yeah,
and of course the iconic. He just like to spend more time reading books and less time burning them.
Yes. He had
It's like he's in the room with us.
Yeah, it is. It is. Oh my God, Sean, is that you?
Yes.
He just had so many characters, I think, that resonated with a lot of people, and it's just sad. I know he was 90, so this is one of those, like, we've gone but not forgotten. A lot of times we were meant to do, like, people that have passed way too soon. Obviously, Sean Connery had a stellar career, a long career, but this one, it just, I think it hit everybody, so it was like, let's talk about it now. We're going to talk about celebrities that have died in old age, and that's okay. And it's okay for him to have died peacefully in his sleep. Like, that's probably a good way to go. But we just wanted to show our love and respect for Sean Connery because as movie fans, he's been in so many, and we have nothing but love for the man. We hope he's resting in peace, and wherever you are, Sean, we miss you.
And thank you.
And thank you. Yes, exactly. All right, so the next segment is our awfully good or just plain awful. Now, Wayne did not get a chance to watch the movie this week, which is okay. We're both busy doing stuff. I wasn't as busy this week, obviously, because I got no family around. I'm alone. All right, so this week I did the movie. I'm kind of picking, like, the first two that we picked from. We did Staying Alive, and then this one is Precious Cargo. I wanted to do an old one and a newer one. The thing they have in common is they're both 0% on Rotten Tomatoes. So take that for whatever you want. I know a lot of people are like, oh, Rotten Tomatoes, but people need to realize it's just averages. It's not actual, and it's opinions. Movie reviews are opinions. If you don't like them, you don't have to listen to them. You don't have to yell at them either. That's what I follow a lot of critics on Twitter, and they get yelled at all the time because people are like, oh my God, how did you not like this movie? It's like, it's an opinion, man. Get over it. All right. So, Precious Cargo. It's a movie starring Mark Paul Gosselaar and Bruce Willis and Claire Forlani. And right then and there, I just said Mark Paul Gosselaar. You're probably like, wait a minute, he does movies? Yes, he does sometimes. And
if this was the late 80s or the early 90s, I would have been really excited for this. Not gonna lie.
This is an attempt by him to be an action star. And I say attempt, and I use the term loosely. Because it
just doesn't work.
It's basically wants to be Michael Bay, but for $500,000. And okay, I'm just gonna run down my list here. So it opens up with him hitting golf balls into the ocean, and then there's a drug dealer that comes up, or a gun dealer, or whatever, and then that gun dealer is shot. And they do the thing it was done in Losers with Chris Evans, where he points at the guy and he gets shot. They do that, and he's counting, and so it's supposed to look cool. And then the guy gets shot by his sniper that he's got overhead, who's a female. There's a line in the beginning that I wrote down. I quit grade school because of motherfucking recess. I'm not quite sure what that means, but that's what he says. That's said by Mark Paul Gosselaar's character in the beginning of the movie. And I wrote it down because I was like, huh, that's interesting. So then they kill the bad guy, the gun dealers, and they take their money and guns and whatever. There's something going on there. I'm not really sure. Then it goes to these cheesy opening credits like it's a TV show. It's like big graphical photo of like Mark Paul Gosselaar with a shotgun. It's like Mark Paul Gosselaar, and then it cuts to like Bruce Willis, Claire Forlani, and I'm like, it's really like TV show graphics. So there's this scene where he's on the boat with the sniper girl, and this is after this opening credit scene, and she finds this photo in his book, and she's like, oh my god, Jenna better not see this photo. It's a photo of him and Claire Forlani, who's the other female lead character. And so, like, she throws it into the ocean because he's like, I'm over her. Throws it into the ocean. They cut to a shot of someone scooping it up out of the ocean with a fishing net for no reason whatsoever. It's not like the photo is seen later in the movie. Why would anyone scoop it up out of the water? Maybe to show that they don't like litter. Like, I don't know what the whole purpose of that shot was. It was so weird.
I knew we forgot something.
Yeah, right, exactly. She called him Nutless Wonder, which I thought was funny because there was really no point to it. Bruce Willis, again, doesn't try. I've mentioned this a few times in his more straight to VOD type movies, even in his theatrical film Death something, the
Death Wish.
Death Wish. He was terrible. He didn't try. And let's see. In one scene, they make it sure to know that when they pan out of Bruce Willis, he's holding a map. No idea why, but they go over his shoulder and he's holding a map in his hand. Claire Forlani plays a crazy woman named Karen, so very fitting for today. Let's see. Oh, there's a shot from behind of Bruce Willis's head that he's giving dialogue over that's obviously not Bruce Willis. But it's like a pan, and it's showing him looking over a city, but it's someone else's bald head. It's like we've seen Bruce Willis's bald head enough to know that that's not him. It's obviously a stunt double. He couldn't make it that day or whatever. And not to mention that Karen breaks into Mark Paul Gosselaar's house when him and his girlfriend are having sex, and it's nighttime because they were having dinner. The dinner is still cooking on the stove, even though she says, I ate your leftovers. Doesn't make any sense. The bad guy calls Bruce Willis from outside. Clearly nighttime, okay? Clearly nighttime outside. And Bruce Willis is like, yeah, go get him or whatever. And it's nighttime on his side. And then they cut back to Karen inside the house. They're eating dinner. Or she's eating. And it's obviously lighter outside now all of a sudden. And then when they run from the bad guys who break into the house, it's daytime. Clear as day. And I'm like, so did Karen come out really early in the morning, 6 a.m.? I don't think so, because I'm pretty sure she arrived at night. So did she stay there all night with them and to have this conversation about how they're going to run from these bad? It was so stupid. I was trying to justify it and explain it to myself. I couldn't do it.
She's a Time Lord, obviously. She stole Bill.
Yeah, she's a Time Lord. Yeah, maybe she stole the time machine. Terrible, playful banter happens. This is another scene too. So she's like, Jenna, the woman who didn't know he was a criminal, is so she's like, oh my god, I can't believe you're doing all this. And at the very end of this scene, when they finally run away from the bad guys, she's like, oh, well, are you going to be okay? Well, call me later. And I'm like, wow, you got over that real quickly. Then, later, when they take Logan, who is the female hitwoman, that they, or not hitwoman, sniper, and they take her, she gets shot, so they take her to her place because she's a vet, of course, because they needed that scene in the movie. She's like, never call me again. And I'm like, really? I'm like, this is what puts you over the edge, not almost being murdered by 3 bad guys? There's this weird scene where the main Bruce Willis's right-hand man gives these 4 prostitutes money advice and how to spend their money wisely. It was so bizarre and so weirdly written. I was confused. Bruce seems to not be on set a lot. I'm going to spoil the movie. He gets shot at the end. Obviously not him getting shot, because they do such a wide shot that you can't even see who it is. And you can tell it's the same bald stuntman. Stupid. Low budget Michael Bay movie. I mentioned that already. No chemistry. Logan was the best character, I think, that the sniper woman, but she was not a very good actress. So that's my rundown of Precious Cargo. I would say that it is just plain awful and not awfully good at all. There's not really a lot of fun to be had during this movie. You could skip it, that's for sure. Moving on to our final stuff here. We're going to talk about, I'm just going to run down my list of Halloween movies that I watched recently, and then I'll toss it over to Wayne. The Mortuary Collection is a collection of short stories, film on Shudder. I really liked it. Clancy Brown is like the narrator. He's really good in it. It's got a great twist to it. The Devil's Candy stars Ethan Embry, who's an actor from the 90s. People remember Can't Hardly Wait. I've watched this movie every year since it came out for Halloween because I love this movie. It's like what I would call like a heavy metal horror movie. A guy and his daughter and his wife move into this house, and it's this house that this crazy guy used to have. He killed his parents in it, and he returns. So it's a really just cool, messed up story. Lots of blood and guts at the end too. Very nice. Lost Boys. We talked about that last week. Urban Legend. Slasher movie from the 90s. Very, much like, hey, Scream did it, so we're going to do it. Still a fun movie, though. I like the cast. A really good young cast in that one. Jared Leto before his Oscar. The Wolf of Snow Hollow, which is like a indie werewolf movie starring Robert Forster, Jim Cummings, and Ricky Lindholm. It's Robert Forster's last movie. Very good. When I heard this movie was coming out, I didn't expect much. Very emotional, very just all over the place with everything. Great action, great emotional drama, great comedy. Same with the next one I watched, Spontaneous. It's a coming-of-age movie where kids spontaneously combust in class for no reason. It's only happening to this one senior class, and they're like detained and stuff, and there's a lot of E.T. references. Very fun movie, very bloody, obviously, because people are exploding, and that will happen. Catherine Langford is really good in this from 13 Reasons Why. I loved her in this movie. I thought she was fantastic. And then last night, obviously, I watched Halloween. And, it's a classic. What can I say? It was my favorite horror movie of all time. It was followed up by a special premiere on Shudder of the movie Lucky, starring Brea Grant, which is a kind of inventive psychological slasher, which I thought was pretty cool. You'll be able to check that out on Shudder sometime in 2021. So that's what I watched this week, Wayne. Where are you at?
First and foremost, for all of my Star Wars fans, Mandalorian Season 2, first episode dropped on Friday. It was fantastic. There was no drop-off from Season 1. I am very excited to see where it's going to go. There's something big that y'all need to see. If you haven't watched it yet, I'm not going to say it. Like Scott Jordan, who ruined it for me. Thank you, Scott. Just kidding, bro. I love you. Yes, it starts off good. And what happens kind of makes you draw a job, but yeah, it's back. That's what I'm really excited for. What else I've been watching? I'm plugging my way through Sons of Anarchy still. I'm on to Season 5.
Nice.
Let's see. I am on Season 2 of Dawson's Creek. I'm just plowing through with stuff that I'm being consistent with. But yeah, very excited that The Mandalorian is back, and we have a lot of stuff, a lot of rumors are flying around for what's going to happen in Season 2, but
I got to catch up still. So
Baby Yoda is still adorable.
Yes, as always.
Baby Yoda show!
All right.
Yeah, that's what I got.
That's what you got? All right. I do want to make 2 notes from 2 of our last episodes. The Halloween episode, Wayne, you asked us about the shape and Michael Myers and the credits and stuff, and we never really answered it. Well, in the first Halloween movie, there actually are 3 Michael Myers credited. Michael Myers at 23, which is when the mask gets removed at the end of the movie. I don't know if you remember that. And then he puts it back on. Michael Myers is a kid. And then The Shape, which is Nick Castle, who's the man in the costume with the mask on the entire time. So when they take the mask off, that was like a buddy of it was Tony Moran, who is a buddy of John Carpenter's. And they're like, we need a face. And they're like, your face is perfect. We'll use your face. So they used his face instead of Nick Castle's face, which Nick Castle is more the face in the newest one. So there's that correction. And then last week we talked vampire movies, and I totally forgot to mention Bliss, which is one of my favorite movies of last year and is a vampire movie and is awesome and amazing and on Shudder. So this is just me throwing more love on Bliss. Go watch it if you haven't seen it. It should have been in the vampire episode, but it was not. I'm going to get on to news and notes, and then we'll be wrapping up real quick here. So we'll start with the news. Oscar Isaac is in talks to play Moon Knight on Disney Plus in the Disney Plus series. Pretty exciting news. The Marvel shows are kind of getting all their actors in line, which is nice. Assassin's Creed live action show at Netflix. I'm interested in this. Mainly, too, because I know Fassbender, I believe he was part of the one that had the rights to do the movie because he produced it and starred in it. So I wonder if he has anything to do with the TV show. It'd be interesting to see. I know the movie was supposedly terrible. So Ginger Snaps movie franchise is becoming a TV show. Patrick Wilson, the star of The Conjuring and the Insidious films, will be directing and starring in the fifth Insidious film, which will be a sequel to the first and second movie, which followed his character and his character's family. Sandra Oh and Awkwafina are going to play sisters in a Netflix film produced by Will Ferrell. I'm very excited about this. I like both of them a lot, and I think that could be great. Clive Barker officially joins the Hellraiser TV show for HBO. This is big news because he was mad that they were making it and was like trying to sue everybody, and then finally they made him a producer, so I think we're good to go on that. That should be a lot of fun. Movies coming out. The Midnight Sky, directed by and starring George Clooney, hits Netflix December 23rd. 2 Weeks to Live, starring Maisie Williams, is a limited series that'll hit HBO Max on November 5th. I'm very excited for that one.
I'll chime in real quick. There's some Tom Holland stuff. He got the script for Spider-Man 3. He was hinting that a little bit. There's also some pictures of him portraying Nathan Drake from
Uncharted, which just wrapped filming. Yep.
I'm excited for both of those. I just wanted to throw a little love his way because.
I just finished. I'm in the middle of the fourth Uncharted game. I finished the first three while I was not working. They're fantastic games. I'm looking forward to that movie, even with Mark Wahlberg as Sully. I'm not sold on that yet, but we'll see. But the Spider-Man, he left the Uncharted set and went right to the Spider-Man set. So he is ready. Everybody is ready to start filming that. We'll probably start to get the tidbits that we were getting a little bit of who was going to be in it, possibly Toby and Andrew Garfield. We'll see if that comes to light. I'm really excited for Spider-Man 3 for sure. I'm glad they've just finished filming Shang-Chi as well. So the Marvel, even though they're not releasing their movies, they are still working on them and getting them done. So that is kind of, at least when they're ready to be released again, they will come out. But that's our show for this week, everybody. Thank you for listening. We'll have some big news coming up here probably in a couple weeks of some things that we're going to be doing. But yeah, so that's, we're glad that to who's listening is listening, and we're whatever, even if it's just one person listening every week. Thank you, Mom.
Thanks, Mom.
we're very happy for that. So we appreciate it, and we hope everyone's doing okay. Go out and, actually, you should have already gone out and voted by the time this episode airs, so I hope you did vote. The world may be looking a little different by the time we come back next week, so we'll see. All right, everybody, have yourself a great week and enjoy your weekend.
Give us a like and a listen. We love you. Bye.